USL has been in the headlines recently with their plans for a new First Division and for their plan to introduce promotion and relegation for the first time in the US soccer system. Today we talk to former MLS executive Paul McDonough, who is now president of USL. Paul McDonough, thanks very much indeed for joining us on the soccer business. It's been a busy time for USL. A lot of coverage in the news, a lot of things going on. Great TV ratings for your first game on CBS as well, adding to that sort of buzz. We have a number of people who read our newsletter and watch our videos who are from outside the United States who maybe have only started paying attention to USL over the last few months while this news has been prominent. Just explain a little bit, perhaps the history of USL, but also what makes it different from MLS.
Yeah, the USL really in its current form has been around about 15 years. It is a franchise model. So what that means is the league office sells franchises right now in Division II and Division III throughout the country. And once you buy a franchise, you own that club and you run that club how you see fit. We don't have a lot of, structure or rules around roster restrictions, cap spending, where you can recruit players from. The MLS is very much a single entity structure. So when you buy into that, you buy into being a part owner of the league, and they all make decisions based on how they set up their rosters and their teams and how they want to move forward in direction. Very different, the single entity structure versus our structure where, when you buy a club, you get to run it the way you want to run it, very much like the rest of the world. So right now we're in Division II and Division III, and we're going to be launching a Division I league in the coming years. So we'll have Division I, Division II, and Division III, and we'll link all of them together through promotion and relegation.
So in terms of revenue sharing or input from the league, I mean, you handle the broadcast deals nationally, yeah?
Yep.
Are clubs free to do their own local deal? How much input does the league have into sponsorship and these sort of areas on top of what clubs do themselves individually?
Yeah, most of the business is locally driven revenue. So the clubs get to decide their local revenues from sponsorships. We assist with local TV deals. As far as national sponsors, there's not that many in the league, just because the teams own a majority of the assets. But we do have some national sponsors, like Charlie's our kit sponsor, but a lot of our teams don't wear Charlie. But they come in and they support the league, and they try to get in with some of the teams, and they've picked up some of the teams. As far as the TV deal, we'll try to negotiate the best TV deal possible to fulfill obligations of showing our team on TV. We'll go back to the owners. We'll tell them what that is. And right now the structure is the league office will pay for the national TV broadcasts. So when we have games on CBS, the league office covers those costs. When we're on CBS Sports Network, Golazo, ESPN, ESPN2, the league covers those costs. So as we build, the teams will do their local TV deals and they control all the inventory there. And then we just look to build, because TV is going to be a big part of any business as you move forward.
I mean, as you say, it's much more familiar to people involved in the game in Europe as it's recognizable compared to the football leagues that exist in Europe. One thing that's obviously been missing from the picture has been promotion and relegation. You announced that a few weeks after announcing that you were going to launch a new Division I league,
yep.
Which would put you in the position, an unusual position, it has to be said, in international soccer of a country having two Division I leagues at the same time. How do you imagine that would work? I mean, it is unusual, but obviously this is a very big country as well, and a lot of markets that don't have MLS teams. But is that basically what we're talking about, you playing in the cities where MLS aren't?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at our footprint, we're not in MLS cities, but we do have some cities in this country that have, 7, 8 million people, right? So they can maybe have one or two teams. It's important for us, right? They have their system, they have their structure, but this is a very big country. We also have different standards here in this country that were implemented a long time ago on what classifies you at a certain level. We think it's time probably for some of that to change. It's about getting more clubs in more cities throughout the country to grow the game in this country. So I'm not too worried about two Division I leagues in the country. I think we're just two very, very different systems, and us linking Division I, Division II, and Division III through promotion relegation, we'll build the way we're going to build and try to link the three of them together to make something compelling for fans in those markets and people that want to identify a little bit more with the European and global game.
Yeah, I mean, it has created a lot of interest. There's no doubt about that. I mean, online there's been all manner of discussions about what Pro Rel can mean and what a new Division 1 would look like. I mean, those standards as they exist would require a lot of your clubs to do major upgrades. There's no doubt about that, yeah? We had Alexi Lalas on this podcast a couple of weeks ago, and he was saying he really hopes that US soccer's attitude is to enable this to happen, to support this happening, rather than to put obstacles in the way. Obviously, that would require some sort of discussion about those standards and so on. Have those discussions begun yet, or what sort of sense do you get from US soccer about that?
Yeah, look, it's a new regime in U.S. soccer. They've been really good in trying to grow the game. They're very pro-growth. They've spent more time, I think, with what we're doing and trying to understand what we're doing. They seem to support it. I think one of their big things is they want to talk about sustainability. Sustainability to make sure that clubs aren't going to go out of business and that things through promotion relegation don't get so difficult, because I think it's common, the perception, right, that we've dealt with a lot is people compare it to when you get relegated from the Premier League to the Championship and the loss of revenues. Right. We don't have those same problems. We're not as mature as the leagues in Europe. So the national revenues and those centralized revenues, they're not there yet.
It's so massive TV contracts that's the factor in
England, isn't it? And that's just not here right now, right? Yeah. And people will sit there and go, okay, well, if you get relegated from Premier to Championship or Championship to another league, you see the losses, right? And what's that going to look like in the USL? And we don't see that, right? We're looking at it, and we're trying to combat more of what it looks like for teams that get promoted. Right? Because spending is going to increase, travel is going to increase. So we're trying to offset some of those things. But a team that gets relegated down a tier, they're not going to suffer a big financial burden.
It's interesting that, isn't it? Because if you think about a club like Louisville City that has a good, healthy local fan base, it's hard to imagine those fans turning away from the club because they were playing in the USL Championship rather than the Premier Division or whatever it's going to be called.
Yeah, we've kind of had these conversations, right? And we don't feel that that's the case. And really, it's really, really interesting. When we were going through the conversations around promotion relegation, the most ambitious owners that wanted to push for Division 1, they were the biggest proponents of promotion and relegation. And people would say, well, that's crazy. They're the ones with the most to lose. But they also understand the opportunity that comes with it, right? With sponsorships and TV and eyeballs and differentiation. So it was really, really interesting how people on the outside perceive it to what actually happened on the inside.
Right. Yeah, no, that is interesting. I mean, I think fans enjoy going to a game of football on a Saturday afternoon at the moment, don't they? That's. I mean, it's not so much the commercial impact of relegation, as you're saying, from one tier of USL to the other is nothing like what it's like between the Premier League and the Championship.
Yeah, look, I think when you look at our league and where our teams are, they're very much community centric teams, right? And that's not saying that, I was at Atlanta United. It's not saying that Atlanta United is not a community centric team. There's just so much more in the marketplace, right? Whereas when you look at Albuquerque, right, in New Mexico, it's their club, right? Charleston, that's what they have. If you're a Richmond fan, and no matter who they play against, if you want to go see other things, you have to travel an hour to see professional sports. So that they rally around that club. And I think we are trying to lean into that community aspect, where, it's a good thing and a bad thing that people still go and support their teams when they're not winning. But I think with this jeopardy now, this hopefully will make things a little more exciting. But I don't see fans turning away from their team if they get relegated.
Right, yeah. I mean, I'm curious how it's going to work in practice, though. I mean, I know you've got to work out a lot of the details. I'm sure there's a lot of discussion still to be had. But in terms of expansion teams, if you're going to be expanding the Division 1, I think in a previous conversation we had, you suggested that some of those teams would be upgraded from the Championship and some would be completely new clubs investing in building a new team and so on. Yeah. I don't know what kind of ratio you're imagining on that. And if you're paying for an expansion to come in, why would you do that rather than start at a lower level for 2 or 3 years and promote yourself to that level?
I think everyone looks at it a little bit different, right? And it's a common topic of conversation, because people will say, oh, well, we're just worried someone's going to buy into the bottom and they're going to buy their way up.
Right.
Well, it doesn't always mean when you spend the most money that you're going to get promoted, right? No. Look at Manchester United right now, right? They spend boatloads of money and they're not doing well. You've got to get really good at your craft. I think also it comes down to money from city or state. Will a city or state want to support you financially with help on a stadium if you're going to go in at the bottom tier?
Right.
They might want more support, more ambition. Yeah. So every situation is really, really different. But I kind of laugh with the idea that, well, we're just going to go in, we're going to save money on the expansion fee, and we're going to buy our way up. And there are plenty of examples throughout time in our ecosystem and other ecosystems where people think they can just buy their way to the top. And at the end of the day, it's a cruel game. And it doesn't mean it always works out. When you're really, really good and you know who you are and you have a really, really good system in place and you're patient, it works out, right? But for every Wrexham, there's 10 teams that haven't done it, that have tried.
More.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Yeah, it's something we look at. I think implementing it is difficult when you look at expansion and how expansion fits in and how you build a structure, right? And those are a lot of the conversations we're having now as we're looking to go to the application process for Division 1. What do our tiers look like? And how do we find something that we can continue to grow, we can continue to stay relevant, we can continue to build something that people can understand and it's not changing, every year. Right. That's really, really important to us, that we find a system that can work, that we're not saying, okay, now all of a sudden we're going to go from single elimination to home and away or something else, right? In the knockout rounds. So, what I've kind of asked our group to do is to look at things in kind of almost like a 5-year mindset, where we can build something for 5 years and plan on this is what it's going to look like. And we can consider expansion and the system will stay the same for 5 years. And then I think as we grow and if we want to change, you can do that after 5 years, right? You can make slight modifications and tweaks. So you're trying to future-proof something that's never been done over here. And, we have challenges. There's just different challenges as you start to look at those things. But it's that's what makes it fun.
Yeah, I mean, there's many, many different forms of promotion and relegation as well, isn't there? I think common amongst fans is this, because the Premier League and the Spanish League are so big, people look at those two leagues and they go, well, it's 3 down, 3 up, or it's 2 down, 2 up. But you know, you look at Germany where they have, and certainly in the past have had playoff games between teams who finish in the bottom three and the top three from the division below. Second chances in that respect for teams. I mean, there's so many different ways you can create a sort of almost playoff system like you have in the Championship in England. Where's your thinking on that, or is that a blank sheet of paper at the moment?
I mean, there's a lot of sheets. It was funny. We had one of our guys working on it, and he had about 16 different iterations of how we could do things, right?
Yeah.
And you know, I think the good thing about us announcing it, we have time, and you know, we're thinking about it in one way. We're going to get with kind of our sporting committee, which are made up from the teams. So we'll bring it to them, and they'll have different ideas and new ideas. And then we're going to see our owners in June, and we're going to talk. And this will be kind of the first, you know, look into what this could look like for them. And then they're going to have time to go back and reflect and say, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Because that's the important part, right? There's so many different stakeholders. And listen, it doesn't matter how we launch this thing. There are going to be some people that love it, and there are going to be some people that say we would have done it this way.
Yeah.
And you know, you have to try to think about what is best when you do this process. And you know, all my experience, I think you always have to go back and you've got to ask yourself why you did what you did at the time and made the decision you made at the time. It's easy to go back and have hindsight and second guess, but why did you make the decision at that moment? And if it's still sound to you later, whether it worked out or it didn't work out, you know, that's okay, right? So we're really turning this thing upside down. The competition structure over here is very different. The most important thing for us is the balanced schedule. We have to have some semblance of promotion and relegation through the balanced schedule. Then how do you consider the playoffs? Do you get that kind of the second chance that you were talking about, right? And we're looking at different models there. Is it a playoff between, you know, the top division and the second, the bottom of the top division playing against the second team and the, you know, middle division?
That feels like a kind of American compromise that would work well in this country, yeah?
Well, yeah, you're trying to think about that. I mean, listen, the one thing that'll happen is our Interleague Cup will have no bearing on promotion or relegation at this stage. But, you know, do you build into that where you have some definite jeopardy, and then maybe there's another team or two that could potentially go up and down on the second jeopardy to start. And then you get into more guaranteed teams with maybe always another chance, right? Because it's very different over here, the playoff format, as opposed to the rest of the world. So how do you get the rest of the world to think that this isn't a gimmick? Because our structure and our P&Ls are built on regular season and playoffs. Yeah. So as you try to incorporate all those things, you're trying to stay as true to promotion relegation the way it's considered in other parts of the world, but also you have to consider how things are done in this country. So, you know, when you're trying to find that balance, that's it's really difficult, and it's an interesting project. Everyone's got ideas. Everyone wants to be part of it. And I told one of the guys, I said, listen, you bring me 16 more of these things, I'm going to be really worried, because you're not going to be invited to any more meetings because you have other things you got to focus on. It wasn't his main thing, but people are just enamored with it. So.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of fan consultation, but I'd probably skip it for this one.
Yeah, it's going to be hard enough when we get to the owners.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's good.
Yeah, I mean, it has generated a buzz, and it opens up all kinds of interesting possibilities, doesn't it? I mean, whatever system you go for, you've still got that chance there of a team moving up a level based on merit, on performance, which is the key thing in it, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing for us, right? You know, if we're looking to see how we can improve and become different, you know, this was kind of the thing, right? You make it about sporting, and you know, there is some jeopardy and some reward associated with that. And, when we talk to people, whether it be TV or sponsors, they're really intrigued by that because it's something that's different, right? One of the things I had met with a sponsor group, and they said, really, people are looking for something that's different now, right? They just
Yeah.
don't want the same old, same old. What is different? Well, it doesn't get much different in this country, because it just doesn't happen at the team level.
Yeah, and I think the public's knowledge of it and understanding it. I'm not talking about the hardcore soccer fans who debate it all the time, but your general American sports fan knows about this now. And just conversations that I've had with people who are NFL fans and so on who say like, oh, if this was England, like the Dolphins would get relegated after that season, and it would do them some good probably to have a season outside and come back and all that kind of stuff. But there's fascinating debates around it. But in terms of the new Division 1, which is obviously something that doesn't require, that kind of complicated thinking around formats and so on, what markets are we looking at? I mean, we're seeing some cities already have set up groups and have got work underway. We see places like Oklahoma City, where they've been working on things. You see Buffalo. There's substantial cities like Baltimore that don't have a big pro soccer team and so on. Are these the markets that you're looking at, or can we expect some surprises in there?
I think we're looking at everything, right? I mean, I think we know that to get this really done, we have some owners that are existing that have ambition to do it. Then there's some in the pipeline, like in Oklahoma City. There are some markets that don't have any teams, professional soccer teams. So we're going to look at all of them. It's been really interesting, the amount of inbound calls and, feeling out about what we're looking for, what this looks like. The application process, we'll end up going out with the application process this week.
Right.
We'll get a meeting tomorrow to finalize it. We'll send it out to our existing owners, the owners in the pipeline. So that'll start because I think, you always hear like, well, is this really going to happen? Did they just announce something to announce something? No, we're full on. This is coming. So I think, what I probably suspect from us is we'll probably, start announcing teams in the next couple of months. But we wanted to go through this process to make sure that we didn't take any shortcuts, that we vetted the ownership groups, even if there are existing ownership groups.
Right.
We wanted to make sure that, they're going to sit down, even if they've been successful or not successful, but they have ambition to go and they can do the stadium. What is their business plan? What are their ambitions? These are our standards. These are our expectations. It's a little bit different because in the existing championship we have now, we have some very high performers and we have very low performers. But if people are going to go, right, it's very important for this league that we drive attendance, right? Attendance is a key factor. We have to have owners that have ambition to recruit and scout and get a better level of player, that they're going to sell tickets, they're going to sell sponsorships, something that TV is going to look at and say, you know what, we can get behind this league. Whether there's 14 teams, 16 teams, 18 teams, we can get behind this. This is something that, they may not have the biggest stadiums in the country, but you know what? They're great atmospheres. The play on the field is good. There's good sponsorship and, it's something they can get behind with viewerships and things like that. So, we're going to start that process. And then when we feel there are teams that are ready, we'll announce them. And, it'll be limited, right? It's not going to be endless at this stage.
Yeah. I mean, I've never quite understood the criteria that is so strict, it seems, about capacity of stadiums because, I mean, it's 15,000, it says, for a Division 1 league, right?
Yeah, I understood why they did it in the beginning. Right. I think when you're launching and when MLS launched and, when you had to think about sustainable business, that made sense. But I think when you look at it now, I think people can run good businesses now. I think it's more about stadium control. I think it's about having a good stadium with the right amount of premium sections that you can sell on non-game days. We have teams in Louisville and Colorado Springs that have shown our teams the path of what owning your own stadium can look like and how it can affect you. So to say that you've got to have 25,000 seats to be considered legitimate, that's not right. 15 is good, but we're going to have teams in our ecosystem that may do, well, Colorado Springs, right? They do 8,500 seats. They run a great business, and it's really important there. I think it'd be a mistake for U.S. Soccer to say that, well, you've just got to go make sure you've got to go invest 6,500 more seats to be considered legitimate. That may break them, because then the stadium may be half full. I mean, there's nothing worse than watching a game and not seeing a full stadium.
Yeah, and that is also a challenge from where we are at the moment, isn't it? When I go on the streaming services to watch USL games, sometimes I'll see a game at San Antonio where it looks very familiar. It looks like a top class game of soccer, and then there's some where I know there's probably 5,000 people there, but I'm not seeing them on TV because of where the camera position is and all that. I mean, that's an old debate in USL, I know. But it's what it looks like on TV is such a big factor, isn't it? Even if you have 10,000 people there, it can look great.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you can put 6,000 people in the right size stadium, and it could feel great. But I mean, these are the things we're thinking about, right? We don't want to have that stadium that is, feels empty. And look, that's not just our league, right? That happens. That's happened in a lot of different sports, except for college football or the NFL. But there's nothing worse than turning on a baseball game and seeing an empty stadium, right? It just doesn't feel great. You're saying, why wouldn't you shrink the stadium down and make it, better atmosphere, better environment?
You talk about people getting in touch since you made these announcements and expressions of interest. Could you give us an idea of, how widespread that's been? And have you had any interest from outside the United States?
We have. Yeah, we have. We've had some interest. We've talked about this before, that, some of the foreign clubs overseas were really interested. They're very interested in the U.S. market, right? Now, does it make sense for a German club to come in here and own their own team? No, probably not. But do they partner with a club? Do they take an equity stake in a club? Potentially. Are there teams in England? We've talked to teams in England. Then we've just had different ownership groups that are looking at it and saying, all right, if we can get into this and it's going to be serious and legitimate, then we can get in here. The price point's going to be very different than where they can get in overseas or domestically. So that's a conversation they're interested in having.
I mean, the fact that if the reports are accurate, San Diego paid $500 million for their expansion fee in MLS, that's going to be a deterrent to some people to go to MLS, isn't it? I mean, or maybe it's not. Maybe for one or two people it isn't. But for a lot of markets, that will be a factor that might make them think twice about MLS. Is that something you think you can take advantage of?
Yeah. Look, I think if you're going to, I think there's going to be certain people that are going to want to go there anyway, right? If they want to go there, then they go there, and there's going to be certain people that want to invest in Europe, where those opportunities are there. And ours, we'll come out with our pricing, and we'll see who has an interest in doing it. And, I think when people start to look at it, they could sit there and say, listen, if we look at the way the MLS was 15, 20 years ago, maybe we get on this and we ride this wave, and maybe they can have some of the same success. There's just some people that just don't see the price point, whether it's, if you're going to get in the Premier League now, it's tough. It's expensive, with all that jeopardy, right? And you go into England and you're playing against some of the big guys, and, MLS, they're going to do what they're going to do, and, we're going to do what we're going to do. Yeah.
But there are some areas, I mean, I don't want to pick on this one, but there are some areas where there is potential for a problem between USL and MLS, in the sense that, you look at San Diego, there was a USL team there that was doing pretty well, San Diego Loyal. We hear about expansion that the MLS, the top market that they're looking at is Indianapolis, where there's a successful USL team there. There's other markets you could mention, Detroit or whatever, that might appeal to MLS. How do you go about sort of defending yourself from that, which it is a bit of a threat to USL, isn't it? If MLS go into those kind of markets.
Yeah, they don't call us and ask us or tell us
Right.
that they're going right. They just show up and go. And how do you defend yourself? I think we are. Right, we're defending ourselves now, and we're growing our 3 tiers, and we're going to bring something in, and then people that want to invest have to decide where they want to go, and that's okay.
Yeah.
They're going to continue to do what they're going to do, and we're going to continue to do what we're going to do. And I'm happy with the growth and stability we've had over my time here, and we'll continue to push on that. There's a lot of interest in what we're doing, and we'll continue to expand, find the right markets. And, there's always growing pains, and we've had to push some teams out, or, some teams have just, folded or whatever, whether it's us or them. But that's always going to happen, right? Especially when we're doing it at the scale we're doing it. And I think that's okay. I think we're getting better at what we're doing. And as long as we keep getting better at what we're doing, we're going to be fine.
Yeah. Away from the top tier and the Division 1 talk and the pro rel at that aspect, there's also been a real boom going on at the moment in smaller communities, yeah? And at the level of, USL 2, USL 1. We had Michael Hitchcock talking on here, who it feels like he's formed about 20 of those teams already, and a lot is going on. The stadiums being built, which I think is crucial. But how do you feel that moment is developing? And we've got all the excitement around the World Cup as well. It feels like every community in America wants to have a pro soccer team at the moment.
Well, I think when you look, right, if we're going to talk about, like League One, right, for us, or, League Two grows, and like Hitchcock's done an unbelievable job with his League Two clubs. But if you look at League One, right, we've started this year Portland, Maine, Naples, Florida, and Avialta out of Lancaster, California.
Yeah.
They're doing great, right? They're doing 4,000 or 5,000 people a game.
Yeah.
They're winning. They're doing well sponsorship-wise. And I think that is a really, really good sign for us and what we're doing at Division 3. And I think people now can see, okay, we can go to the USL if we plan it properly. If we have an onboarding system now. And so we're trying to give teams more runway to launch properly. But I think when you're looking at that, and you can see you can launch a League One club in the USL and you can do 5,000 fans a game, that's real, right? And then you're playing in the league, and we're linking those teams through the Interleague Cup and through promotion relegation. That all of a sudden becomes really appealing, right? So we're just trying to make sure that we do a better job in the expansion process of when those teams come on, they launch successfully.
Right. Yeah. And stadiums seem to be a crucial factor for success. I mean, that's the case for every league, I think, isn't it? But we're starting to see stadiums, soccer-specific stadiums, that are maybe 6, 7, 10,000 size. I mean, is that the future of soccer in America, really?
I think when you look at the size of the country and all the different markets, it would make sense for a city like Charleston probably to do a 7,000-seat stadium, 8,000-seat stadium. Why do more? Naples doing 5,000. When you get certain markets like that, there's no sense to build too big. We do talk to the teams about thinking about the future. So maybe you put a little bit more money into the infrastructure so that if you start with 7 and it's going really, really well in 5 or 10 years, you don't want to have to go back in and put more money into the infrastructure, because that gets really expensive. So if you do it on the front end, then you take expansion of your stadium into account before you build it. So we're just looking at those types of things. But really the big conversation with a lot of people is make sure you right size your stadium and control it.
Yeah.
If you control the stadium, then you can do a better job from a revenue standpoint. There's nothing like getting a bad lease and playing in a stadium you don't control.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's interesting to see. Finally, the World Cup is on the horizon now. It's not, it's just over a year away now, and everyone's been talking about this moment. It's going to be a boom. It almost feels like the boom's happening a little bit before the World Cup. But what do you expect to see in the next 5 years? Do you think we will see an acceleration of growth, or you think we'll see a consolidation? How do you see things going for the game overall?
Yeah, I think people are getting ahead of it, right? Because we've had a World Cup prior, and people probably regret not capitalizing on it before, and they rode the wave after. So I think the idea is to try to get a little more proactive before and ride the wave, so you're ready to capitalize on it after. I do think it'll be a boom. We just have to keep growing, right? We all have to keep growing the game. We have to make it appealing because there's so much out there for sports fans. So how do you and who do you relate to and, relate with from a fan standpoint? So there's so much growth that needs to happen, but there's plenty of kids playing. So if there's more opportunities to play on the men and women's side, then, we should be able to sustain all the professional growth that's happening in the country.
Fantastic. Well, thanks very much indeed for your time, Paul. Good luck with all those big decisions you've got to make and working out the systems and everything. It sounds fun, but also a big challenge, yeah?
Yep. Thanks, Simon.
Thanks.
Yep. Bye.